Welcome to our PMP study. I am speaking to our friends here about the PMP exam. And one of the things I'm challenging them to do is to actually write down the day they want to get certified. Now, I want you, before you make the commitment, this is what I need you to do. I'm going to kind of whiteboard and brainstorm with you here. Okay. So you've already been for training with me. You've already put in 35 hours, right, of training with me. This is your burn chart. You have roughly anywhere from 100 to 200 hours to burn down. Mind you, these hours become more when you don't take the exam on time. You keep pushing the exam out, well, you're going to have to put in more hours to stay afloat. So I want you to keep that in mind. Let's be super aggressive and say you have 100 hours to put in. Okay. I want you to think about the weeks 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I want us to be as realistic as possible. If you are putting in, if you're putting in every week 10 hours, in 10 weeks, you should be done with this. 10 weeks. So 10 weeks is pretty much 2.5 months, which means by the end of February, latest, those of you who have not taken the exam should have taken it and passed the exam. But I need you to put in 10 hours every week. I know some of you are going to get certified before then, but I would rather have a realistic target. Can you put in 10 hours a week to study? If you're studying for 2 hours a day or 1.5 hours a day, it is possible. And I need you to take this burn chart and make it happen. These are your hours. These are your weeks. The date is the 7th of December. So by the end of February 2025, there is no reason why you are not certified. But let me tell you the truth. The 411 is if you're not putting in at least 10 hours a week, you're going to have more and more and more to do. Now, for those of you who are on a fast track and you want to get this done in 2024, you got to reconfigure this. So let me show you what you need to do to reconfigure it. To reconfigure that burn chart, if you want to get certified in the next 3 weeks, week 1, week 2, week 3, because you're doing this in a very tight schedule, I want to put it to you that you can get certified if you studied for 60 hours. And all I need you to do, week 1, 20 hours, week 2, 20 hours, and week 3, another 20. So this is 20, 40, 60. So every week, if you're studying for 20 hours, you can get done by the end of December. You choose one. 2024, December, or 2025. You decide which one you want. Some of you can get certified this year. All you need to do is put in the effort. Now let's think more about this one that is very close, 2024. If you want to get certified 2024, how do you study for 20 hours a week? The answer is simple. Put in 3 hours a day. Put in 3 dedicated hours a day. 3 weeks. 3 times 7 is 21. What do I want you to study within those 21 days? I want you to take 3 mock exams. 3 mock exams. You got to keep getting better and better. Take 3 mock exams. We got 3 mock exams. If you cannot find the mock exam, send me a personal email and I'll send those to you. But they should all be in your queue on PMP Doctor. the FlexiQuiz site, right? Take your 3 mock exams, take your 35 quizzes. There's a quiz for each task. There are 35 tasks. Take all your drag and drops or matching exercises, which are also in your queue. And if you cannot find those, again, you need to holler at me, let me know. And then you also need to study your PMP exam immersion book for those of you that haven't. And again, the longer you leave it, the more you have to go back and start studying again because you forgot. If you want to get certified in 2024, make up your mind to study 20 hours a week. It's doable. Saturday and Sunday, I would amp it up and study 7 hours. So I'd get a lot of study time in over the weekend. You have to determine to do this with intentionality, or you'll never do it. So decide, am I going to do it, realistically speaking, end of this year, or am I going to do it February? The choice is yours, okay? You decide the stakes. Any questions or concerns? Questions?
No, no questions. Still, I think it's realistic. I think it's a good map to follow.
Awesome. Awesome. Very good. I'm happy to hear that. And, I'm with you every step of the way. If there's a single question that you got about anything, let me know. But today, before we jump in, like I was challenging Jamie that she's going to be my co-trainer, and I know she knows this stuff very well, and I was half joking, but we are going to have a top up because I want you to really fine tune, focus, get into the psychology of the exam all over again. Okay. So this is what I call it my crazy neural association video because I'm going to go extremely quick and everything that you learned in 35 hours, I'm going to teach it to you hopefully in the next 15 minutes. Everything. I'm going to give you the lay of the land so that you're back on target, you're back on track, and you remember the enormity of the exam. Okay? So, let's go very quickly through what you need to be thinking about for your PMP exam. Number 1, your PMP exam has requirements. Lots of you have already met the requirements. You've got the 35 hours of education, right? You got the 3 years of experience, or the 5 years of experience if you don't have a degree. And the next thing is to understand the breakdown of the exam. People, process, business. Now you're remembering, it's coming back to you. People, process, business. People, 42%. Process, 50% of the exam. Business, 8% of the exam. But don't forget, there's a division. Agile and hybrid is half of the exam. Predictive is another half of the exam. For you to do well in the process domain, you must remember the 5 process groups of initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling, and closing. For you to do really well on the exam, you must remember your knowledge areas: integration, scope, schedule, cost, quality, resources, communications, risk, procurement, and stakeholder management. Being familiar with this terminology is going to help you. When you have that understanding, put it in context. 5 process groups, 10 knowledge areas. Risk, everything touches risk. Stakeholder risk, scope risk, schedule risk, cost risk, and so on. So you need to have a broad understanding of project management. You need to understand you could have a predictive approach, which is largely linear, or you could have an agile approach, which is very experimental. You also need to understand your Agile Manifesto values. Through this work, we have come to value individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working product over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. These are things you need to be familiar with. You also need to be familiar with the principles. So have a top up of the Agile Manifesto principles. Your highest priority is to satisfy the customer, welcome changes even late in development, deliver working product frequently, work together daily with your product owner and business people, Build projects around a motivated team. Face-to-face conversation is valued in this world. Working product is a primary measure of progress. Agile should promote sustainable development. It's not about fast pace, it's about a constant pace. Pay continuous attention to technical excellence and good design. Simplicity, keep it simple. The best architectures, requirements, and designs, they come from self-organizing teams. And lastly, remember the retrospective. These are foundation stones in the world of Agile. So we've talked about the 5 process groups, the 10 knowledge areas. We've talked about the Agile values and the principles. Another big part of the exam is understanding when should I be Agile, when should I be predictive. And this is well summarized in the Stacy model. If you haven't spent time studying the Stacy model, I want you to put that on your to-do list. Really go in, tunnel vision in it. Nowadays, you can actually do a search on Google and say, teach me Stacy model, or go to Gemini or GPT. It will be worth your while. You really need to get your arms around the concept of when should I be predictive? Well, you should be predictive when things are easy to understand, when the requirements are more certain, when the technical certainty is high. In other words, you're close to agreement and close to certainty on the what and the how. But as you begin to move away from a very firm understanding, you get into complicated, many moving parts. This is where you might need to put on your agile thinking hat to be more agile. And then when you get to complex, this is the world of agile right here. So agile is 2 things, incremental and iterative. When you break things down into smaller chunks, doing the work in smaller chunks, delivering in smaller chunks, you're able to better handle complexity. The last piece that you need to know for your exam is in what we have been studying for months. It is all distilled into people, process, and business. People, process, and business. Let's talk about the people domain real quick. To do well in the people domain, there are certain things that you must know. Number one, you must understand the Thomas Kilmann conflict mode instrument. When do I use force or direct? When do I use collaborate or problem solve? When do I avoid or withdraw? When is it appropriate to smooth or accommodate and compromise or reconcile? There are keywords in the book, in the PMP exam immersion red book, where we break down the keywords. Withdraw or avoid is a retreat. It's a postponement. It's a running away from the conflict. Smooth or accommodate is glossing over and saying, don't worry about me. Just go with what you want. Forget my viewpoint. And that's smooth or accommodate. Compromise or reconcile is looking for some degree of satisfaction. So it's different from smooth or accommodate, which is forget me. Compromise reconcile is not forget me. That's okay. I'm ready to look for 50-50 or some temporal resolve. Force or direct is pushing your own viewpoint from a power position. And problem solving, collaborating, that is the best option. So you need to know things like that. You also need to be aware of the 5 stages of team development: forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. It's all in the book. You also need to be aware of the Hersey-Blanchard model: delegate, direct, coach, support. When do I do those? You need to be all over that stuff. And also the concept of servant leadership. The 10 tenets of servant leadership, they are talked about in the red book. If you haven't gone into those and you're not razor sharp in your mind's eye about those, this is a reminder that you got to do that. So to do really well in the people domain, you got to know the people related things. Another people related thing you need to know is the stakeholder grid, the power interest grid. Monitor, keep satisfied, manage close, keep informed, and know it in a more organic and sensible way. They're not going to ask you cram kind of questions. They're going to ask you, a stakeholder is this, this, this. What should you do? And they might describe manage close. They won't say manage close explicitly, but they might describe it. So you need to be comfortable with this grid. You also need to be comfortable with the SEAM, the Stakeholder Engagement Assessment Matrix, and you need to understand what that looks like. To do well on this exam, you also need to know PMI's terminology of hybrid. So, hybrid is where you mix agile and predictive. You could have agile followed by predictive, or you could have agile and predictive simultaneously on a project. You could also have what I call an injection of predictive into the world of agile, or an injection of agile into the world of predictive. So, understanding these models will help you better understand the questions when they bring them to you. Next big thing you need to know is how Scrum works. Chat into me. How many artifacts are there in the world of Scrum? Who remembers? How many artifacts do we have in Scrum? Thank you. I see a chat there. Ah, thank goodness they haven't forgotten. 3 artifacts. Do you know what the 3 artifacts are? Can you type them in? Give me some abbreviation of the artifacts. What are the 3? Or feel free to unmute if you will. What are the 3? 3 artifacts of Scrum. Okay, thank you, Jamie.
Artifact.
PSI,
Oh, okay.
I see that. Potentially shippable increment. SB, sprint backlog, and PB, product backlog. Brilliant. What about the roles in Scrum? How many roles do we have? Chat them into me. Let's make sure we're on point. Thank you, Shah. I see that. What are the roles? Chat the roles in. Give me an abbreviation of them. These are things that you need to have at your fingertips. And I don't want to take it for granted that everyone remembers. Thank you, Livy. I see that. Thank you, Jamie. Very good. Product owner, Scrum Master, and thank you, Shah. And the last one, developer. Very good. So when we talk about Scrum, it's a 3-5-3. So Mark chatted in 5 things. We have 5 events. Chat the events into me. So when we say team, it really means developers, but some people would loosely say team, Livy. Very good. So when we talk about the 5 events, what are the 5 events? It's very important when we say team, try to understand the context of the question. Are they talking about Scrum team, which is everyone, or are they talking about the development team? Always good to know. Thank you. Sprint planning, number 1. What else do we have in addition to sprint planning? Thank you. The sprint itself. Okay, thank you, Shah. Daily Scrum, sprint review, sprint retro. Brilliant. Chat into me, which of them is an optional event that is not mandatory? Which is an optional event in Scrum that is not mandatory, but the team and the Scrum team should be doing it somehow. It's not one of the 5. It's a different event, but it should be done. Thank you, Livy. Very good. Backlog refinement. You folks are ready for the dive into it. Thank you very much. I was just kicking the tires and making sure everyone was ready to go into the world of Scrum. So there are many things that happen in the world of Scrum. Even before you get into the 3-5-3, there should be some backlog work going on. In other words, first of all, the customer should have an idea of what they want, but you should also have the stories being written. The stories are not going to be written in sprint planning. So did it ever occur to you where are the stories written? They're written in story workshops. These are not talked about in the Scrum Guide, but they happen just by sensibilities. And you could get a product backlog in a variety of ways. You could get a whole backlog. You could get people writing stories together, but all that stuff happens. But I'm glad that you remembered backlog refinement. It's this gray one over here. So what have we said so far? In Scrum, you have the 3-5-3. This is so important because a lot of the questions are going to revolve around that model of having a product backlog, a sprint backlog, which they could also call iteration backlog, and a potentially shippable increment. Should also be aware that we have the sprint planning, but all of this stuff is happening in the big bubble of the sprint which could be anywhere 4 weeks or less. You have your daily Scrum. Remember, it is not a status meeting, it's a planning meeting, it's a sync meeting. We don't do the whole status thing. When we are asking what was done yesterday to move us towards the goal, it's really to sync up. And then you've got the sprint review where the customers check in what was done, and you've got the sprint retrospective. Now, in all honesty, on your exam, when you get these questions, they are not going to be as softball, easy ABC kind of agile questions. So let me remind you of the kind of questions that you're going to be dealing with. You're going to be dealing with the what should the project manager do next? So I'm going to give you a little bit of time to read this, and then I'm going to launch a poll. So I'll give you some minutes to read. And I'll launch a poll shortly. All right. Remember, you have about a minute and 15 seconds to answer each question. So here's the poll. Very well done. Thank you for the votes. So I want you to get into the spirit of the exam and just remember that, yeah, your time is pretty much up now. If this was the exam, the time spent to read the question and answer the question should be roughly 75 seconds. Otherwise, you are going to run out of time if you are this long on every question. You get it? All right, let's end the poll and let's take a look at the results. So let's read through it. So one of the things that we do here is go over questions, but not the volume. It's not the volume of questions that matter. It's the development of the muscle memory to tackle questions on the exam. So if I were you and I was on the exam, this is what I would do. If I was reading the question, I want to first of all highlight key things. So you're managing a development project at PRJ International where a new team member proposes focusing on automated testing for validation, suggesting it will suffice for acceptance criteria. Stakeholders are not clear about their requirements. So we have a problem as far as the requirements to begin with. Even if you were using automated testing, it's not going to take away this problem. We have a requirements issue. So the team is eager to start coding. What should the project manager have done to ensure alignment and success? So if we take a look at the options, we have some that are just not good. And on the exam, you also want to use the strikeout functionality. So delegated the responsibility to quality assurance. That is not a good solution. That is like passing the buck onto someone else. C, trusted the product owner to refine acceptance criteria as the project progresses. So refining as the project progresses, it doesn't make sense. And we're talking about just the product owner in isolation? No. So we're left with A and we're left with B. Held a joint workshop with stakeholders to define testable acceptance criteria. So what they're saying here is as you're crafting the stories in a story workshop, think about the acceptance criteria. That would make sense before the development begins, because your acceptance criteria could actually influence the development process. A that says develop a stakeholder management plan It's not a bad idea, but it's actually called a stakeholder engagement plan. And telling the team to proceed without coding is not a good idea. So it's not that. The best answer, my friends, is B. So whenever you look at these questions, what I need you to do is ask what makes one option better than another. See. And going into option C, while agility is important, refining acceptance criteria as the project progresses leaves room for confusion and potential rework. So we want to lock down our acceptance criteria. Remember the definition of ready? Do you remember what the definition of ready means? So I gave you the INVEST acronym, and we said before you work on a requirement or user story, we want it to be independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small enough to fit within a sprint, and testable. How is it testable? Based on the acceptance criteria. Okay, so well done with that question. So with that question, we're going to jump back into just one more question and then some more content. So let's go to question 2. The product owner at Agile World Limited asks for deliverables aligned with customer needs, but resists defining done criteria, citing time constraints. The team is unsure how to verify completion. What should the project manager do next? I'll give you some time to think about this and I'll launch the poll. All right. Let's launch your poll. All right. You got about 5 seconds. All right. Very well done. Let's go ahead and end the poll in 3, 2, and 1. And let's share the results. And everyone did brilliantly. Well done. All right. Well, now that we're done with a few questions to warm up our brain, let's talk about the definition of done. Does anyone remember, chat into me, in which document does the definition of done live? Which document do you put the definition of done in? Who remembers? Definition of done lives in a document. Which document is it? All right. You want me to tell you? Well, the definition of done is really more an agile kind of concept. You remember it's more agile than anything else, the DoD. So in the world of agile, it lives in some sort of artifact. And this is an artifact that we want to define in the beginning. And when I say artifact, I'm not talking about one of the more common artifacts. So it lives in a, does anyone remember? Won't be the product backlog. It won't be any of the backlogs. Which other?
PSI.
It won't be the PSI because that would be too late. So it has
It's the
to live in
team
a
charter.
document.
Okay.
Thank you. The team charter. That's the one. Team charter. Who was that? Was that Shah?
Yeah.
Yes, it lives in the team charter. Very well done. So you gotta remember that even though the world of Scrum is pretty finite, the world of Agile, you have many more Agile related artifacts. So you've got burn up charts, burn down charts, information radiator, and things like that. Okay. All right. Any other questions or concerns? All right, let's continue. So, the world of Agile is not as finite as the world of Scrum. And therefore, there are certain things that you should be aware of before you exam. And they're not encapsulated in Scrum or the Agile Manifesto values and principles. But these, you have to go into the Agile Practice Guide. Make sure you become a member of the PMI before you exam. Download the Agile Practice Guide and read it. It's about 120 some pages. One of the pages in the Agile Practice Guide that's very important is where it spells out the difference between predictive, iterative, incremental, and agile. So for predictive, predictive is a one-time delivery, single delivery. For iterative, it's also single delivery. We are going to repeat cycles until they're correct, but we're not releasing anything until we get to the end. When it comes to incremental, incremental is frequent smaller deliveries. And that makes it stand apart from iterative. Iterative is a single delivery. Incremental is frequent deliveries. Now, we typically would use incremental for something that is very easy to understand, that doesn't have as much change associated with it. So we do the activities one time, we get done with the product, and we deliver frequently a lot of those products. For example, this is a bottle of water, right? We can define this very easily. This is not nebulous. It's not software. It's not some very hard to understand product. So we can create 50,000 of these and we can deliver those in batches. That is where incremental works best, when the product is not as complex. Now, for Agile, when you're working on a product that has a lot of variation, variability, potential for confusion, this is where you may repeat till correct, but you're also delivering frequently. That is what makes Agile stand out. Agile, we repeat until correct. We do things in iterations, but we're also delivering in increments. So this is in the Agile Practice Guide. It is definitely worth reading before your test. There's another page here that's very important, and it's the PMI's continuum of life cycles, because this shows you when to be agile, when to be incremental, when to be predictive, when to be iterative. So if the degree of change on your project is high, you shouldn't be thinking about predictive or incremental. For those that are high degrees of change, you want to think about this part of the image. So for high degrees of change, you have to be iterative in your approach. When you have frequent delivery, you cannot be iterative. So you can have frequent delivery and a high degree of change. That is where Agile works best. Frequent delivery, high degree of change. On the flip side, predictive works when there's a low frequency of delivery and a low degree of change. See, incremental works best when there's a low degree of change and a high frequency of delivery. And iterative works best when there's a high degree of change and a low frequency of delivery. So for your exam, it would help for you to understand, yeah, this is a hallmark of incremental, or this is a hallmark of iterative. Okay. So far, I've just been building the foundation for what is coming. I've been building you up to understand all of the moving parts in Agile, Scrum, and now I'm going to circle you back into the world of predictive because I know this helps. Having the wake up call helps. And you know what the wake up call is? I challenged everyone. You should know your table. The reason why I keep saying this is PMI act delusional. 1 minute, they're testing you heavily on predictive. The next minute, they're testing you heavily on hybrid. The next minute, they're asking you very agile questions. So this has taught me that In order to do well and not cut corners and cover all your bases, it helps you to know the detail, the minutia in this table. So again, this table, we covered this 3 or 4 weeks ago. You have the 5 process groups at the top. You should know them, the 10 knowledge areas. It's not even about cramming anymore. It's like, do you need to cram the names of your family members? You don't, because they're just like everyday to you. I need this table to be like everyday to you. All of the processes of integration, all of the processes of scope, know them by name. In that way, you are very specific when you're looking at questions. You are immediately knowing, okay, this is scope, this is you got radar, very, very accurate radar going off in your head, and you're able to pinpoint which area it is, and you just get better on the exam. The easy way to cram this table, or should I say, to crack the code, because I don't want you to cram it. Cramming, actually, kids could cram this table. That's not what I'm looking for. But I need you to understand it. And the easy way to understand it is this: look for the commonalities. In planning, we have plan, something management all throughout. Plan scope, plan schedule, plan cost, plan quality, plan risk, plan this, plan that, plan the other. Right? That's how this table is wired. So we have plan, knowledge area name, management, plan, scope management, plan, and that takes care of a lot of the table. In the executing aspect, we have the word manage quite a lot. Manage quality, manage team, manage communications, manage stakeholder engagement, direct and manage project knowledge. So it just gives you breadcrumbs for you to recall. So if you remember, planning has a lot of words that start with plan, knowledge area name, management. Executing has a lot of the word manage. And then monitoring and controlling, it has a lot of the word monitor, a lot of the word control. See that? Control. See that? Control, knowledge area name, control, knowledge area name, control, knowledge area name, control, knowledge area name. And then where there are humans involved, like communications, we have monitor communications, we have monitor stakeholder engagement, we have monitor risk because you really cannot control uncertainty. So they toned it down and started calling it monitor. And we have control procurement. My friends, this is over half of the table. There is absolutely no reason why you cannot just kill the other half and just get it down pat, have it in your head so that any question you get from predictive, you know where they are going. Now, to wrap this up, I don't want you to think, oh, I have to apply every single process on every project. No, I have the 80-20 principle and I take the processes of integration, developing your charter. I also put in identifying stakeholders, directing the work, monitoring and controlling the work, managing the project knowledge, and closing the project or phase, as well as controlling quality and validating scope. When you put that together with performing integrated change control, guess what? You pretty much have all the associations to understand how project management works in predictive. Let's go over it very rapidly. For your 49 processes, you got to understand that the project manager develops a charter. That charter has information that can help them glean who their stakeholders are, and that becomes an input to identifying stakeholders. Your project charter also becomes an input to planning. When you develop your project management plan, it becomes an input to directing and managing the work of the project. It becomes an input to monitoring and controlling the project work. And it really becomes an input to almost everything else, except developing the project charter, which came before, and developing the project management plan. To be quite honest, the project management plan is a very influential document. It goes into managing project knowledge. It goes pretty much everywhere except two. Now, to continue this discussion, the project management plan is an input to controlling quality. Controlling quality is where we're going to check the deliverable. Direct and manage project work is where the deliverable is being performed, where the deliverable is being worked on. So we get a deliverable and it goes for a quality check. It's like direct and manage project work is the cooking. Imagine you're baking a cake. What do you do before you serve the cake as a good cook? You're going to taste the cake. So control quality is where you're tasting the cake. It just makes sense. Work performance information is information that you glean as a result of controlling processes. And all of that work performance information needs to be put into some kind of report. And that's why we're showing the arrow going to monitor and control project work. But ultimately, when you've tasted your cake and you're like, this cake tastes good, we then stamp it with approval. That becomes a verified deliverable. And then it goes to your customer. And if your customer tastes it and likes it as well, then we call it an accepted deliverable. And that gets transitioned to operations. And operations serves the cake. It's that simple. So when I'm thinking about the 49 processes, my friends, I don't want to complicate it. I want to create this thing which I call the PMBOK guide mainline. And it will probably do you good to create a mainline by hand. And in that way, you're going to learn the associations and get more familiar, more confident with it. Okay. For the past number of minutes, I've been trying to get you to see the enormity of the syllabus, but I've been condensing it down for you. Okay. Next, we are going to another question. So we answered question 2 last time. Let's go to question 3. You are managing a project at Engineers R Us that requires frequent releases. A team member recommends focusing on continuous integration practices, but stakeholders emphasize rapid deployability. What should the project manager emphasize to the team? I'll give you some time to think about it and I'll launch a poll. All right, a few seconds. Okay, 3, 2, and 1. So this is one of these questions that needs to be read with scrutiny, but at the same time with simplicity. Let's go ahead and end the poll. End the poll. Okay, and share the results. So I applaud you on being able to tackle this one because it does sound a bit nebulous. Let's cut to the chase. What are they looking for here? What is the stakeholder looking for? Stakeholders emphasize rapid deployability. So what should the project manager emphasize? Deployability. You want to make sure that you are able to deploy rapidly. So which one best summarizes it? Allocate additional time to automate all test scripts before deployment. That does not necessarily tell you what the customer wants, which is rapid deployability. It says allocate additional time. That doesn't sound rapid, right? Limit scope to avoid frequent deployments. That's like counterintuitive. The customer doesn't want that. The customer does want rapid deployability. We're not talking about frequent deployability. So again, D is off the track. So it boils down to A and B. So A, ensure all increments are tested and always ready for immediate deployment. Now you ask the question, is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's a good thing, right? It's a good thing to ensure that you are always testing and you're always ready for immediate deployment. B, focus on integrating code frequently. Now, that is not a bad thing, but it says why? To maintain a validated centralized code base. So it's like you're saying, hey, focus on integrating the code so we can maintain a validated, centralized code base. It doesn't mean that you are deploying. It doesn't mean that you're doing it with a view to deploying. And you have not sensitized the team to what is near and dear to the customer, which is immediate deployment, right? It's the immediate deployment that is the main thing. Could integrating code frequently help? Yes, but it doesn't emphasize what is the obvious in the question. It's a very tricky question. And sometimes knowing a little bit too much can shoot one in the foot because you know that integrating code can help you be deployable, but there's nothing in B that emphasizes what is near and dear to the customer. A, ensure all increments are tested and always ready. Always ready is really saying what B is saying invariably, but then it's offering more context for immediate deployment. So the best answer, my friends, is actually A. While B is not bad or wrong, it is not the best. So continuous delivery ensures increments are deployable at any time, addressing stakeholder needs for rapid deployability. B, focus solely on integration without ensuring deployability doesn't meet stakeholders' need for rapid delivery. And this is a kind of trickery that question writers use. Sometimes knowing too much could hurt you if you lose sight of what the question is about. Very, very tricky indeed. All right, let's go for another one. The leadership at PLI Incorporated has mandated an agile transformation, but has no clarity on how to measure its impact on team collaboration. During a planning session, different leadership styles cause confusion. What should the project manager have done first to guide the team? Okay, let's go ahead and I will launch the poll in a little bit. All right, very well done. Let's go ahead and end in 3, 2, and 1. Thank you. All right. So it's very polarized here, but let's read the question together and again, using things like highlighting and the process of elimination. So I'll highlight a few things. The leadership at PLI Incorporated has mandated an agile transformation, but has no clarity on how to what? How to measure. How to measure the impact on team collaboration. Let's think about this again. We want to be agile in our firm. We want to have an agile transformation, but we are not clear on how to demonstrate the impact of the agile transformation on team collaboration. You see the dilemma here? So the problem is they don't know how to measure the impact on team collaboration. During a planning session, different leadership styles cause confusion. What does that really mean? Maybe the leaders have different approaches to leadership. One is using directing, one is using delegating, one is using coaching, one is using supporting. So there's some confusion. What should the project manager have done first to guide the team? So, one of the first things you do as a leader, just going through the hierarchy, once the team has been put on board or the project, think about it. What would you do first? What would you do even before sending them for training? Think about it like that. What would you have done first? Rule number one, the team charter. You got to let them know why they're here. What are we about? Not just getting into work and looking to learn tools, but it's really number one, rule number one is, hey, here's here's where we're going. And as a result of that, you can eliminate the things that you would not have done before that. So, D, conducted training on collaboration tools. That's not the first thing you do to guide a team. While tools are good, while practices are good, while training is good, it wouldn't be first. But let's go to C and see if we have something better. C, analyze team dynamics and shift it to directive leadership style temporarily. Well, directive is really command control, and that is not the best option. So we cannot just say that, hey, team, we don't even know each other, but I'm just going to shift to directive. No. B, let the team identify their preferred leadership styles through experimentation. It's not the best approach. You don't let the team identify their preferred leadership style. You, as a leader, you are situational in your leadership approach. That's what should be most important. So if we look at it, we've got A, define a clear vision and mission for the transformation. That's really the key thing at hand. So if you look at A and D, A will come first, D will come second. So the best answer is A. Again, I know it's a very drawn out process in me showing you how to go through the mental process, but you have to go through the mental process and say, why is this one better than that one? Especially when it boils down to two. And remember, you're running out of time on the exam. So what I'm doing here in 5 minutes, you have to do it in like 60 to 75 seconds. Okay, so here's the rationale. If we look at D, focusing solely on tools without addressing leadership misalignment doesn't resolve the root cause. We look at A, establishing a vision and mission is fundamental. That's 101. That's team 101, right? Especially through transformation. There has to be an establishing of the vision and the mission. So while D is not bad, it does not come before A. This is what makes the exam a little bit tricky. It's the questions that are fine line dividing stuff. So you've done very well, my friends, and we're almost at the top of the hour. But I did promise we were going to join those neurons, and this is the final run up. Let's talk about the three areas in the next few minutes. This is the big reminder. On the exam, you'll be tested on the people domain. These are the things you need to do. You need to build a team, define the ground rules, lead the team, build a shared understanding, ensure people are trained. Did you see the difference there? So going back to the question we just did, you define the ground rules, you lead a team, you build that understanding, and this is where training comes in, mentoring, empowering the team, managing conflict, engaging and supporting virtual teams, collaborating with stakeholders, addressing those impediments, supporting team performance, promoting team performance through using EI. And EI is all about understanding your emotions and being able to bridle them and then influencing the emotions of others. And then we have negotiate project agreements. These are all the things in the people domain. After the people domain, the next domain is the process domain. So in the process domain, we have 17 things. They're as follows. You got to determine the appropriate method, agile, hybrid, predictive. What are we going to do? You establish the governance structure, then you integrate the planning, and then you plan everything else. As you're integrating, you're planning, you're integrating, you're planning the phase closures, you're planning scope, you're planning schedule, you're planning budget and resources, you're planning quality and risk and procurement. And as you're planning, you're executing, you're managing, you execute the project with urgency to deliver business value because we have cost of delay. We have a penalty for not delivering early. We ensure knowledge transfer. We manage project issues. We manage project changes. We manage project artifacts, all of those plans and baselines. We manage communications and we engage our stakeholders. And honestly, that is the summary of the process domain. The final domain we have, my friends, is the business domain. And the business domain is very simple. The business domain has four things. Number one, you got to plan and manage compliance. Compliance is big. HSE, health, safety, environment, things like that. Make sure you're in compliance. Then you evaluate and deliver project benefits and value. Remember, benefits and value are conjoined. Value is all of the benefits, tangible and intangible. When you lump them together and you say these are all of the benefits, you're really talking value, right? Value is the net benefits experienced by the customer. You evaluate and address the external business environment changes for the impact and scope, and you support organizational change. These are the four things you do in business. And with that, my friends, we are at the end of our session for today. We have covered the enormity of the syllabus, but my charge to you is going back to the question, how are you going to burn down the hours? You're either doing this before the end of the year or you're doing this next year. And the question is, which one? Are you going to get this done using this idea right here, 2024, 20 hours a week starting from this week? Or do you want to leave it on the back burner till next? And it's okay. I know some of you have to, but you got to decide what to do. All right. That's all for today, my friends. I will go ahead and I will stop the recording and take any final questions. Thank you.